Chapter 1. And he said, I am the author of your life. Can you read 2 pages at the same time? Even the most skilled, talented, brilliant individual cannot achieve this. This simple question came to me one day while I was praying in preparation for a meeting of home educating mothers in the Cape. Home education is part of the story which he has written for my life, as I was called to this way of life before I had my first child. As I pondered on the question of being able to read 2 pages at the same time, I began to realize that, as impossible a task as that is to do, so it is with our lives. We cannot know what tomorrow will bring. Nobody is able to determine with absolute assurance what will take place in their lives tomorrow or even their very next breath. We cannot know for certain what our next moment will bring. Only one thing is certain, and that is Jesus. He is the same, yesterday, today, and forevermore. He is the author, perfecter, and finisher of our faith. In Hebrews 12:2, we read, Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. His plan for us today, this moment, is to live according to his purpose. The only way we can live what he has written is by being obedient to his word, the inspired word of God, written and given to us to live by. He reminded me, I am not a God of confusion. 1 Corinthians 14 verse 33. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. With so much confusion in the world around us, what an inspiration to know this truth. God is not a God of confusion, and he is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The mothers at the home educating meeting asked so many questions about tomorrow. What about next year when my child must go into high school? How will I be able to educate my child through the high school years if I don't feel confident to do so? How can I be certain that I'm not missing something vital in their education? I was able to answer these questions by reminding them that he is the author, perfecter, and finisher of our faith. He is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. If we focus on what he has called us to teach our children today, and that is to teach them about him and his word, the instruction for the lives of the children whom he has entrusted to us can be found in his word. He loves us. He is not a God of confusion. Surely if we teach our children more of him, then this is sufficient. As we teach them of Jesus, we are certainly fulfilling his purpose as he has instructed us to. Proverbs 22 verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. And in Deuteronomy 6 verse 5-6, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. What way is that? His one and only way. If we spend time teaching our children his way, they will not be confused by the things of the world. We can direct them according to his written plan for their lives, his written plan for all of our lives, his word. How exciting it was to share this truth with these mothers. Instead of us spending hours of confused time trying to find answers to the many pressures and demands which the world presents, we could turn to our Creator and hear what his word instructs us. Generally speaking, when one reads a novel, it spoils the story if we read the last chapter first. Not only could this spoil the story, but it could also bring confusion, for we would have no idea what the beginning of the story was all about. I encourage these mothers not to be tempted to want to read the last page of their child's lives, because this is sure to bring confusion, and besides, this is not what God instructed us to do. We cannot quickly jump to chapter 10 and read chapter 10 to 12 all at once. And so it is with the lives of our children. How can we read what chapter 10 says about the life of a child when the child is now only 5 years old, and chapter 10 is when the child is 10 years old? This is not possible. Let us focus on the chapter, or more specifically, the page at hand, and that is today. He says we are to live each day for him and be ready for his return every day. In his wisdom, he has made it so. We cannot read 2 pages at one time. We are to read today's word and live by it, and we shall be blessed, and so shall be our children. Practically, how do we do this? His word instructs us to live as his saints. I most certainly would love to be an example of a saint for the Lord, and so be an example to my children. In a time of study, I found the following 21 attributes of a saint. The definition of a saint: 1. Freedom from jealousy. 2. Constant delight in God. 3. Keep life committed to God. 4. Absolute trust in God. 5. Consecrated to do good. 6. Simple and unwavering faith in God. 7. Absolute dependence upon God. 8. Freedom from anger and wrath. 9. Meekness and humility. 10. Abundance of peace. 11. Complete satisfaction with our lot in life. 12. Mercy, compassion, and benevolence. 13. Obedience to God's leading. 14. Freedom from discouragement. 15. Righteousness. 16. Wisdom and justice. 17. True to God's law. 18. Propagating truth among men. 19. Living peaceful and upright lives. 20. Possessing full salvation. And 21. Standing firm in times of trouble. We could strive in our own way to walk as saints, yet we would constantly be disappointed with our inability to do this in the fullness which would satisfy our Lord. But through Jesus it is possible. We have been given all that we need to walk in the life which he has written for us. 2 Peter 1 verses 3-4. His divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness through our knowledge of him who has called us by his own glory and goodness. Through these he has given us very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature and escape the corruption in the world caused by evil desires. This was a gem which I discovered in his word. 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 11 and 12. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, and to work with your hands, just as we told you, so that you may win the respect of outsiders, and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. How is it possible? A quiet life in this fast-moving pace of life the world presents today? I recently experienced a day which gave me enough reason not to lead a quiet life. I greeted the day with a pounding headache. I began with the morning functions, got the children up, made breakfast, motivated the children to complete their morning responsibilities, then settled down to do our Bible study. As we began, the phone rang. Interruption 1. We settled down again, and there was a knock at the door. Interruption 2. My son Jamie ran to open the door and tripped, fell, and burst into tears. I greeted the guest at the door over the cries of my child, excused myself from the guest, and carried my son to his bed. My daughter, Missy, ran to fetch an ice pack. The guest waited patiently in the cozy lounge, our entrance room. When Missy returned with the ice pack, I instructed her to go and offer the guest something to drink while I attended to crying Jamie. My pounding head had not improved. I fetched Jamie a painkiller and took one myself. I sat a little with Jamie, knowing that I had a guest waiting. I said to Jamie, I'll pray for you, and then I must go and see to our guest, and I will be right back. How grateful I am for the gift of prayer. As I stopped to pray, I instantly sensed a rebuke in having not begun my day with prayer. The moment I woke with my pounding headache, why had I not begun there and then to pray? I repented and asked God for his comfort for this little hurting boy. I left the room, reminding Jamie of God's constant presence, and went to meet my patient guest. I was blessed to find that Missy had not only offered our guest something to drink, but she had laid a beautiful little tea tray with a small vase of flowers and biscuits. I was further blessed to hear that our guest had used this time of waiting to pray for our family, and especially Jamie. We then all went to Jamie's room and sat on his bed and enjoyed our visit. Once the visit was over, we continued with our Bible study, and once again we were overwhelmed by his love as we read from James chapter 1 verses 2-5. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given. We give thanks for the wonder of his most appropriate word given at such an ideal time. We thank him for his love. He does not find fault in us. He simply gives generously when we ask for wisdom. We prayed together and continued with the daily routine of maths and language lessons before we moved on to our social studies. I became aware of my rapidly subsiding headache, and so had more to give thanks for. I reflected back on the morning and realized how I was given opportunities to show the Lord's compassion to my son, appreciation for my guest, and thanksgiving for my daughter. This is such a simple example of how an everyday morning can be filled with the acknowledgement of Him when we take time to see Him in every moment. Or it could otherwise have been a morning filled with annoyance and irritation, especially as I had planned it so differently. My plan was for us to complete our formal learning early so that we could go into town to do the overdue grocery shopping. The town nearest us is a 40-minute drive away. We live in the country and have 8 kilometers of dirt road before we reach the tar, so it always takes some planning to do a simple grocery shop. We must leave early enough to have all our shopping done and be home before sunset. We also need to consider that we may drive the dirt road slower than usual if we are traveling behind one of the logging trucks. Logging trucks are always on this road as we live in a forestry area. As a result of Jamie's fall earlier that morning, we went into town later that day, but not for grocery shopping, but rather for x-rays, as his ankle had begun to swell badly, and we were concerned he had broken a bone. The result of the x-ray did reveal a few cracked bones in his foot. We managed to hurriedly purchase a few grocery items before taking our little broken boy home to bed. We had many more moments throughout this particular day to acknowledge that He is the author of our lives, and as long as we accept this, if we see every moment as an opportunity to meet His need rather than our own, then every situation can bring glory to Him rather than irritation, disappointment, frustration, or whatever negative response we may have in such difficult situations. Perhaps we may even delight Him in being His saints, living and walking according to His purpose and not our own. If our attention is on Him, surely we will be living His purpose plan for each day, His specific plan which He has written for each one whom He created. It is my prayer that this may be more possible every day, for He has promised that nothing is impossible for those who love Him. Proverbs 16 verses 3 and 4. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and your plans will succeed. The Lord works out everything for His own ends. If our attention is on Him, surely we will be living His purpose plan for each day.